Okay, here we are. A view from Mulberry Street. Again, this is Matthew J. Mary, and this podcast is dedicated, I don't know to what, to talking about the law, to talking about criminal law, to talking about, organized crime in the courthouse and how much the government abuses its authority in an unlimited way. And last time we were talking about the famous commission case, the crown jewel of Rudy Giuliani's prosecutorial career, a career that launched him into the mayoralty of New York City, okay, and then on to the national scene. But, the commission case was an interesting example of everything that's wrong with the federal criminal justice system. In a few minutes, I want to go into how defendants are sentenced in federal court. And you regular people out there, and you lawyers out there, criminal lawyers who don't practice in federal court, you're going to be astounded at what they can do and what they do all the time in reference to sentencing people after they've been tried and convicted or after they've taken a plea. So we'll get into that today a little bit. We'll get back to the commission case. I wanted to talk a little bit about Rudy Giuliani's role as the prosecutor in the commission case. And it's very interesting because Rudy is one of the coldest fish that you could ever meet in your life. I mean, I'm not saying that defense lawyers and federal prosecutors frolic with each other and that we're friends, but there's a lot of bantering that goes back and forth between the defendants and the defense lawyers and the FBI and the prosecutors. We try to have a laugh or two. I call it gallows humor, when you're in such a terrible place in such a terrible situation. It's very important that you can have a laugh once in a while. But when I was on the commission case, I got to meet Rudy Giuliani for the first time. And I didn't think that Rudy knew how to laugh or how to make a joke or how to accept a joke. And Rudy was just kind of far away and distant during the commission case. And I didn't notice any of the lawyers, maybe one of the old timers, talk to Rudy directly, but most of the lawyers wouldn't even bother with him. And strangely enough, many years later, I get to meet Rudy Giuliani when he was running for mayor. And at that time, I was the chairman of the board of directors of a charitable organization called the Community Mayors of New York State. And the head of that organization was a restaurateur and Brooklyn businessman by the name of Dominic Della Rocca. Dominic Della Rocca is long in heaven now, and he spent maybe 60 years of his life helping handicapped kids. We used to take the handicapped kids to the circus at Madison Square Garden. We used to take them to WWF wrestling. We used to take them to botanical gardens of Brooklyn or of Manhattan. We used to take them to Shea Stadium, to baseball games. We used to have a Christmas party, a massive Christmas party. 8,000 kids at Kennedy Airport. We also had a Christmas party at Newark Airport for another 2,000 or 3,000 kids. I'm talking about kids who are, I'm sorry to use the handicap word, but that's the language I grew up with. Kids in wheelchairs who could barely, they couldn't speak, they couldn't walk, but they were able to enjoy the festivities. So that was a great part of my life. I did that for 25 years. I was the chairman of the board of directors, and Dominic Della Rocca was the head of that organization. He was the chief executive mayor of the Community Mayors. And Rudy Giuliani, when he was running for mayor, he came to Dominic Della Rocca, and he had been involved in the organization. And I have to say that Rudy was sincerely involved in that charitable effort. And he went to all of our stuff, all of the events, all of the parties that we had. And, when he was running for mayor, Dominic liked Rudy Giuliani. I didn't. I voted for David Dinkins that year. And Dominic Della Rocca, told Rudy Giuliani, Rudy, if you're going to run for mayor, you've got to learn how to shake hands. You got to shake a man's hand and make him think that you're happy to meet him. He told Rudy Giuliani, when you meet people who are supporting you, you've got to hug them. You got to hug them and make them feel your warmth. And they practiced on that, and it was quite a spectacle to behold. I mean, I was snickering, laughing, holding my handkerchief over my face because Rudy just didn't know how to shake hands, and he didn't know how to hug someone. And great Dominic Della Rocca, one of the warmest men you could ever meet in your life, taught Rudy Giuliani how to hug people and how to shake hands. And Rudy lost the first election to David Dinkins, but Mr. Dinkins kind of screwed up the city so badly that Rudy won the second election. And I have to say, to Rudy's credit, that when he became mayor, he didn't abandon us. He doubled his efforts. That's my fax machine. This is my office. So we've got to endure some distractions here. But this is my home office. Anyhow, so I got to know Rudy through the community mayors. One time, Rudy Giuliani and I were stuck in a room, and we were waiting for guess who? We're waiting for Santa Claus. That's how the community mayors work. When we were at Kennedy Airport in the airplane hangar, the highlight of the day was Santa Claus, the Santa Claus from the Macy's Day Parade, the real Santa Claus, if you will. Would come in either on a helicopter or on a plane that would be coming down a runway, and he would greet all of the thousands of children who are in wheelchairs. And so one day, because I was the chairman of the board of directors of the community mayors, Rudy and I were like, I don't know, guest of honor. We were going to greet Santa Claus, and we were stuck in a room together for 40 minutes. And I couldn't figure out what to talk to Rudy about. So I remembered that he was a Yankee fan. And as soon as I started talking about the Yankees, Rudy woke up. He woke up from his personality slumber, and he talked to me about the Yankees for 40 minutes. And that passed our time. We met Santa Claus, and the day was a great success. So what I'm saying is, even though Rudy Giuliani was the most zealous prosecutor in the history of the United States, overzealous, right? And he did many, many bad things. He ruined many, many lives in the criminal justice system, without question. But I must say, the truth is the truth, that he was a damn good mayor, and Rudy was a good community mayor. He helped us with the handicapped kids, and Dominic Della Rocca loved him. And, there are two sides, maybe 10 sides to everybody in this world. So I'm not here trying to make Rudy out to be a good guy. But let's get back to this. So let's get back to the commission case, all right? And again, Carmine Persico is the best example of how people are abused at sentence by the federal government. Carmine Persico, contrary to what anyone might think, was never convicted of any murder in his life. And he was to court many, many times. He was on trial many, many times. The commission case had little to do with murder, all right? It had to do with a scheme by the four top companies, construction companies in the city of New York, with what the government called four of the so-called crime families. And the whole thing was a bid rigging scheme where Company A would get the first construction job, Company B would get the second one, Company C would get the third one, Company D would get the fourth one. Four companies, okay? And needless to say, none of the four companies were indicted in the commission case. Only the Italian guys, the so-called mob guys, were indicted. And the construction companies that made millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars over this thing, they got nothing. So, so be it. That was the commission case. But getting back to how people are sentenced in federal court, nobody would believe that when you are sentenced in federal court, you would think the judge would have to sentence you on the counts that you were convicted of. Okay, and each count holds a certain amount of time, prison time, that they can give you. But in federal court, it's different. And not just for Italian people, but for everybody. The government has the right to bring into the sentencing procedure anything they want. And when I say anything they want, it's anything they want. And they could bring up other crimes. They could bring up murders. They could bring up anything that's bad acts, they call it. B-A-D, acts, A-C-T-S, bad acts, any kind of bad act, they could bring up at your sentence. Now that means in the sentence of Carmine Persico on the commission case, the prosecutors brought to the attention of Judge Owen the murder of a man named Carmine Galante. Carmine Galante had a nickname, Lilo, L-I-L-L-O. Carmine Galante was alleged by the government to be one of the most, one of the toughest guys that ever lived in the streets. And Carmine Galante was someone that I knew very, very well. I would dare to say he was like an uncle to me. Yes, another uncle. Boy, I had a lot of them. And Carmine is, in my eyes, was a very great man. And I could tell you a lot of stories about him. And maybe I will. Not today, but some other day. I'll leave that for the future so you have something to look forward to. But I've got a lot of Carmine Galante stories. And some of them are pretty chilling. But anyhow, Carmine Galante was murdered in the backyard of a restaurant, Joe and Mary's restaurant in Brooklyn. The famous photograph of Carmine, with a cigar clenched in his mouth in death, as it was in life, and he's toppled over in the garden of this restaurant in Brooklyn. And anyhow, about 100 people, maybe I'm exaggerating, but about 100 people were accused of this murder in all different kinds of cases. And at the sentencing of Carmine Persico, Junior Persico, the government brought up the fact, the non-fact, the false fact, that the government claimed that there was a commission meeting. Remember, we're talking about the commission case today. And the government claimed there was a commission meeting to determine whether or not Carmine Galante, who was the self-proclaimed boss of what they call the Bonanno family, the meeting was about, they say, whether Carmine Galante should be killed or not. And the theory that the government put forward was that in order to kill a boss, you've got to get permission from the other bosses of the other families, which is kind of ridiculous and absurd to start with. Let me ask any of you out there, if you wanted to kill the boss of a crime family, would you seek out the permission of the other bosses? I mean, what if they say no, you can't do it? What might that mean for you? I'll tell you, it wouldn't be anything good. So that whole rule that the government has put into the folklore of the federal criminal justice system is just such BS that it's so hard to digest. But anyhow, the government claims that there's a rule, and they claim that some two-bit punk cooperator of theirs, I won't even mention his name because he's dead. He doesn't even deserve to be remembered. He was a cousin of Carmine Persico. This person told the government, told the FBI, that Carmine Galante told him, Carmine, Junior Persico, told this idiot, this punk, that Carmine was part of a meeting and that Carmine voted no. Carmine said, no, don't kill Galante. Don't kill him. Okay. And the government presented that idea to the judge, to Judge Owen. You might think, well, the judge might say, oh, boy, You voted not to kill him, so we can't hold that against you. But with the judge ruled, Judge Owen, according to law, and it's valid law. This is valid law. It's not things they make up along the way. The law allowed the judge to rule that since Carmine participated in a vote about whether someone should be murdered, that he's responsible for that murder, even if he voted not to kill him. Don't kill him. Don't do it. No, that counts for nothing. Okay. But, I knew Carmine Persico very well as a client and as a friend and as a father figure. And Carmine told me unequivocally, over and over, through the years, starting in the 1980s and going right up to his death a couple of years ago. There never was such a meeting. There never was a so-called commission vote on Carmine Galante and whether he should be killed or not. And you know what? He had to get 100 years. Part of his sentence, Judge Owen said to Carmine Persico, Mr. Persico, you belong to an organization that has the power of life and death. The power of life and death. And for that, you've got to get 100 years. Unheard of in the annals of the courthouse. But anyhow, it turns out that 35 years later, a guy named Joseph Massino, who was my client for many years, who was a personal friend for many years, Joe Massino was convicted of numerous RICO crimes and was facing life in prison. And Joe Massino decided to be a cooperator, a rat. So Joe Massino turns himself in to his judge, Judge Garifas, and he tells the judge, I want to start cooperating. And I want to be clear, Joe Massino was not my client when he decided to cooperate. In fact, when he was arrested, the government spent a lot of energy to get me out of the case. I got kicked out of the case. So that's another story about how the government operates. But anyhow, I didn't represent Joe Massino. He got convicted. Now he becomes a cooperator. What do you think Joe Massino, the self-proclaimed, admitted boss, I'm the boss of the Bonanno family. Okay. He says that back in the day when Carmine Galante was killed, that he, Joe Massino, got the order from a gentleman named Phil Rastelli, who was in prison. And Joe Massino says, I don't say, he says, that Phil Rastelli, who was the actual boss of the Bonanno family, according to Joe Massino, Phil Rastelli gives the order to kill Galante because Galante is trying to take over the family. This is on record. I'm not spilling the beans on anything. This is in court papers. They're in 302s. Massino's testimony in court. He says Rastelli gives the order that the murder of Carmine Galante has nothing to do with the so-called commission. So there never, as Junior Carmine Persico told me, there never was any such meeting. This is all baloney. And yet Carmine Persico gets 100 years. And yet, when Anthony DiPietro and I file a motion written by Anthony, all of these facts, which have been uncovered, not by us, but by government documents, their own cooperators, Joe Massino, all right? Joe Massino says, no, the murder of Galante has nothing to do with the commission, okay? Was there a meeting? No, I don't know of any meeting. Listen, the courts ignored this. They ignored this. We slapped it right on the judge's desk, okay? Judge Duffy, all right? And Judge Duffy didn't even respond, didn't even in his decision denying Carmine Persico to be resentenced. Our motion was called a Rule 35. We wanted Carmine to be resentenced from 100 years to time served, which would have been 32 years at that time. And the judge ignored what the illegal lies that were put before the court, before Judge Owen, at the end of the commission case, and they just said, "Oh, no, 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 no. There's overwhelming evidence against Mr. Persico. The sentence was justified." Another, whitewash. Another whitewash. Someone once told me, if someone has a red X on their file, that means they're never getting out of jail, no matter what you can prove. So after 30 years, we're able to prove so much about how Carmine Persico's trial was mishandled by the government, how the sentence was based upon false information that was disproved by the government's own cooperators later on. And it's just, it's hard to swallow as a criminal defense lawyer, but we have to swallow it. Just getting back to Carmine Galante, as I said, I was very close to him. I knew him well, and I knew Phil Rastelli well too, the person that Joe Massino, who I knew very well. Massino says Rastelli gave the order on Galante. Okay, interesting. Rastelli was never charged with that, thank God. He's a good man. He died in prison, basically. They let him out 2 weeks. They let Phil Rastelli out 2 weeks before he died because he was totally demolished. He couldn't speak. He couldn't move. He had to be medevaced by a helicopter to take him out of the prison, and they let him die in the hospital. That was very nice of them. A little better than what they did for Junior Carmine Persico, who they allowed to just die in the prison. They wouldn't even take Junior Persico to a hospital. We begged them, take Junior to the hospital down the road. But anyhow, Carmine Galante. How many people did it take to murder Carmine Galante? Let me tell you, the government in numerous cases claimed to lay it out very clearly about the events of that day at Joe and Mary's restaurant. And yet, when I say they prosecuted 100 people, that's an exaggeration. But I would say that dozens of people were prosecuted for that murder. People who don't even know each other. And in fact, there was a story that I've just got to tell you. There was a book called The Iceman. The Iceman. I forget the Iceman's real name, but the Iceman was convicted of about 19 murders. So the Iceman, who's not Italian, who's got nothing to do with organized crime, the Iceman writes a book. And he claims that he murdered like 200 people. His headquarters was a Mr. Softy ice cream truck. And he would take many of his victims into the back of the truck and strangle them and so on and so forth. Now this nut, in his book, he claims that he killed Carmine Galante. So, it just goes on and on and on and on. Poor Carmine Galante, will he ever rest in peace? I mean, even the Iceman, this idiot Iceman, had to claim that he killed Carmine Galante. Well, there's so much more to talk about concerning the commission case. And I think that we will be talking a lot more about the commission case and integrating it into some of the other things that we're going to do. And I'm hoping as time goes on that I just won't be so heavy-handed in reference to my being upset with the federal criminal justice system, and hopefully we'll get to tell a few good stories and make you laugh. But one last thing for today with the commission case. This has been talked about in documentaries over and over and over. Not just the one we spoke of last time, Rudy Giuliani and mobsters. You always see that in the middle of the night on cable TV. But Netflix, they did a 3-hour special about the commission case. I spoke to no less than 3 people from England, merry old England. They came over to see me. I didn't ask to speak to them. I didn't want to speak to them. They found me. And I said, how did you find me? Why are you calling? We know who you are on the internet. We want to speak to you about the commission case. And I had several meetings with them. And I said to them, how long will this production be? I mean, how much on-air time will there be? And they said it will be a 3-hour special on Netflix. I forget the name of what they called it. They didn't call it the commission case. They called it something else. I'll tell you next time. It's not important. Everybody knows what it is. It's on Netflix. 3 hours of baloney. Oh, God, what pathetic nonsense. And I said to them, listen, I'll do this for free. I'll be in your program for free. I just want to have a contract which says that 15 minutes of what I have to say will be broadcast. And I told them that what I'd have to say about the commission case would be different than anything they've ever heard. Okay? And I supplied them with all of Anthony DiPietro's briefs in the Carmine Persico appeals, the Rule 35, the compassionate release, our efforts to overturn the sentence of Carmine Persico contained references to thousands of pages of government documents that show the commission case isn't what it's cranked up to be by the government. And they refused, outright refused. They said, we'll ask you a few questions and this and that. What they wanted was a stooge. They wanted me to be a stooge, and I'm not a stooge. And I told them very forcefully, unless you could guarantee that I could tell the truth, for once, about the commission case, unless you can guarantee that, I don't want to be on your program. And so, anyhow, today we're telling the truth. We're telling the truth about the commission case. We're telling the truth about Carmine Persico, about Carmine Galante, about Phil Rastelli. I mean, it's just disheartening that it's hard to get the truth. And today we have all these podcasts and all these rats, the cooperators, the people who claim to know it all. They don't know anything. You get these guys on podcasts who are cooperators. They're scared to go to jail. They manipulated the entire public. They robbed people, schemed, defrauded people their whole lives. They pulled the wool over everyone's eyes. And then they got involved in organized crime. And they pulled the wool over their eyes, okay? And then they got arrested by the government, and they're facing time. And so what do? They pull the wool over the eyes of the FBI and the U.S. attorneys, and they walk free after killing people wantonly, recklessly, without any mercy. They walk free.